Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. How are you? I'm hanging in there. And how are you doing? You're doing good? I hope you're doing good. Today has been a very interesting day. It is September 8th. If you know what that is. There's a couple cool things. Well, cool. Maybe that's the word I shouldn't use. But there is a bunch of things that are happening that have happened today. But this is a live stream. So if you're watching, thank you, by the way. Get that out of the way. But today I'm going to be talking about electric vehicles. I saw a article on a website called electric.co. And I wanted to talk about it. I really wanted to talk about it because it's kind of interesting. And I really feel like we need... The article itself is self-explanatory, but it would be kind of interesting to kind of talk and see what people's opinions are and, you know, what kind of comments you guys have about this kind of stuff. And do you believe that this stuff is true, you know? So let me get right into it real quickly and show you what the article is. Here it is. This is the article right up here. Moving to electric vehicles will dull recession currently inflated by oil markets. So if you don't know, this is interesting. This whole article popped up and it just so happened to coincide with myself going to the grocery store and spending much more money than I used to spend. And I'm hoping that much more is proper vocabulary. I spent more than I had before on groceries, which has been a growing trend, but it was really noticeable this time where I didn't get a whole lot of food, but it was a very expensive amount of food for what it was. So, you know, I this article comes up and I'm like, oh, this is such an interesting topic. I would love to talk about this. So here we are. Let's talk about it. You know, moving to electric cars will dull the recession. In this article, the person goes on to claim here that if more and more, and I get a notification from Xbox, gotta love those, Ghost Recon Wildlands is on Xbox Game Pass, guys. So if you have Xbox Game Pass and you like Ghost Recon Wildlands, it's available on there. Cool. So anyway... without going too deep into this, let's just talk about what it is. He kind of gives he does a very good job at writing, by the way. He gives you a good scenario right at the beginning here that talks about, you know, can you imagine you're sitting in your car, you can roll down the windows because you can breathe, you know, you don't have to worry about tailpipe smoke coming out from a combustion engine, which is a great thing for cities, by the way. I love it. I actually drive a Volkswagen ID4. I love that car. Volkswagen, you need to get up on your stuff and get your software updates updated so that I can get some of these features that are offered in your other cars. Just saying, I'd like auto lane change. I'd also like access to profiles so that my wife can have her own personal profile with her own things that she cares about inside the car, and I can have mine. Just saying, that would be nice. That'd be nice, you know. Anyway. There's a few other reasons I want that software update. It would be really nice to get 170 kilowatt fast charging. You know, I won't go into it in this one. I'll make another video like this talking about my charging experience so far. I know there's a lot of videos about people who detail kind of what it's like. I would like to do the same thing. I want to detail a little bit because I've had my car since the end of January, so going on 8 months. I've made 8 payments to that car. But 8 months, so I feel like 8 months, not 6 months, but 8 months is a good idea. I've went through, you know, January and February, which is our winter months here in Florida. Not much, but it is. You know, we went through the springtime in March, April, May, all the way up to June, and then June and July and August, and now we're getting into our fall time. So I've kind of seen all the seasons with the car, and I'm kind of getting a good idea of where we're at. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about something different. Something I really wanted, something about this article. All right. So basically, he goes on to detail a few different things, right? He talks about right down here, if you can see, in 2000, 2008, oil and gas were high. In fact, in June, it was what? $5 a gallon was the average, I think. I forget what time of the year it was, but I don't think it was June. I think it was before June. It was like February and March and April. I remember the gas prices were really, really high. And of course, I have my own opinion about that. I don't think it's right to say those were high because of other reasons. I'll call BS on that every day of the week. These gas companies could lower their rates. They don't need to get so much. They're just trying to make profit hand over fist. That's a whole other issue that we as American people should address. Anyway, back into the story about electric cars, though. You know, he's talking about the $5 a gallon, and he's talking about Apple, Google, and Facebook. They've paused hiring and they've slowed off because, you know, they can't afford the same rates that they used to because people are asking for more money than they ever used to, which isn't just this. It's funny because it's more than just the gas prices that caused that. That's one of the reasons I want to talk about this. It's more than just gas prices that were driving these deals. Apple, Google, Facebook were seeing hand over fist growth. They were able to hire more people. They were able to take in more people who wanted to work. They were able to look at new projects and trying new and different things. Now we're at a point where it's tapered down again because people want more money. So they don't want to pay that more money. And, you know, when people don't have money, they can't afford to constantly go out and buy and spend on other things. You know, we can look at the stock market alone and say within the stock market, you get to see how these companies, their values were really, really high in 2021. And then they taper down a little bit, but now they're really tanking down. Now people can blame that on, you know, politics, but it's not on politics. A lot of it has to do with the people who are buying these are not willing to buying the stocks and are investing in those companies. They're not willing to give more money to those companies. They don't want to. For whatever reason, it could be that they're trying to cut on their losses as well because they're losing money. They gained a whole bunch of money, and when things started going, they started to sell, you know. Now, that's a whole other topic for another reason for the money part of this, but the idea is they don't have the money to spend anymore. And so when they don't have the money to spend, they're going to cut back on hiring. Says that they were laying people off. I don't remember hearing about Apple or Google laying anybody off. I think Facebook might have, but I don't remember reading that anywhere. But anyway, that's besides the point. The point is that these companies are no longer hiring. Or they're hiring in very small numbers. They're trying to curb their projects back. They're focused on staying instead of growing. They don't want to lose, they want to stay so that when the time is ready, they can grow. You can see it here. It says companies that ship goods often feel the impacts the most as air, ocean, and freight expenses all rise. This is true. So in the case of Apple, Google, and Facebook, perfect example. They can't sell as many iPhones. They can't sell as many Google Pixels, I guess. Facebook can't sell as many. Well, now it's Meta. Meta can't sell as many virtual headsets. So what do you expect? You know, but it's more than that. Like, they can. I feel like blaming just one thing is not right. Those companies are not just ducking that. They're also having to pull back on their projects because there's not as much funding coming in. But it definitely does affect it when you make a product and you can't sell as much of it, which is something that we're seeing in the EV world, by the way. Like I said, I have a Volkswagen ID4. I recently, probably a month ago, talked to my sales rep from when I purchased the car from a local Volkswagen dealership here, and he said that they hadn't sold that many since I bought mine. Maybe one or two. That's all they could get because, unfortunately, they have Volkswagen's harnesses at the time were coming from Ukraine, so that made it even harder. But they were having trouble just getting more units off. They couldn't produce them fast enough to really get them out. We know about Tesla's building a gigafactory and wanting to get what is it called? Shoot. It's a mega die cast, I think is what they call it. I think they call it a mega cast or mega die or something like that. But it's basically a huge die casting machine, which is awesome, by the way, because for safety alone, that car is going to be Model Ys that are going to be die cast are going to be so much better for safety. So if you're worried about safety in an electric car, Model Y will definitely have good safety with its being cast instead of having to be welded. But that's going to help lower the times, which will try to bring prices down. But unfortunately, a lot of these companies are having trouble just building the cars in the first place. It's really, really hard. Volkswagen recently moved their ID4 production to Chattanooga, Tennessee. They just actually had a press event for the ID Buzz. I would have loved to have gone, but I need to build a following first before I can do that. Sorry about the creaky chair. I need to get a better chair. But the Chattanooga plant in Tennessee builds two cars. It builds the Atlas line of cars, which is the Atlas and the Atlas Cross Sport, and they're building the ID4s. The ID4 is the only ID we have in America. We do not have the ID3, the ID5, which is interesting. I'd love to get the ID5. I think the ID5 would work in the United States. It still looks enough like a crossover that it's practical, and certainly could fit into our marketplace. It would be nice to see at least a sedan option in there just for people like me who want to get something smaller. I would love the ID3 as well because the ID3 is a smaller car. It would be nice to run on that. That's besides the point of this whole thing. But yeah, you can see he talks about Amazon's Q1 2022 earnings. Now, remember during peak COVID, peak pandemic time, that Amazon was making money hand over fist. They were seeing large amounts of profits. And well, it's kind of tapered off. Again, same thing that I always say about this stuff. Tapers off. It does taper off. No matter what, you can't sustain that level of high all the time. So, good thing is they're not making the money that they used to make. I'm glad about. Usually here he says these costs get passed on to the consumer, leaving them with two choices: either pay more or spend less elsewhere, which is what we had to do, which brings me back to the point about the groceries. That cost goes to us. We need groceries. You have to spend the money. Now, here he goes into how the European about the European economy, where rising gas and oil prices are destroying the European economy, and because they rely heavily on Russia. So with all the sanctions going on in Russia, they can't get their gas as much. Again, I don't know what to say about that because that's a totally different market, and in fairness to like the United States versus Europe. Europe is connected to Asia. Really, a lot of people like to call it Eurasia because Europe and Asia are connected. They're not two separate continents. They're one big continent that's divided. China is where a lot of our products are coming from, or in a lot of those eastern countries on the Asian continent. They could still theoretically transport them to Europe by driving a truck of some kind, or some other way to transport it. You don't need to see flight, and you don't need to see boat. Now the cost, yes, the cost will be high, but they won't be out of stuff. They shouldn't be out of stuff like we are, because they don't have to bring a boat across the ocean. There's a whole logistics about the boat stuff. I remember when I was building my PC, how crazy it was trying to find a simple power supply just so that I could run the PC, because I had to get an 800 watts power supply for the graphics card that I'm using. I use a professional style graphics card because I like to do video game design. But even then, I need to have a special power supply. It wasn't available. There was a whole entire thing about it. You can see that he's talking about here, Germany's the largest importer of Russian energy. So one of the things that he doesn't talk about in this, but is talked about in a few other ones, because I've looked it up a little bit, is how Europe is not energy dependent. Germany is not energy independent. They are dependent upon energy from other sources to maintain their grid. People who are against electric vehicles are going to come out and they're going to tell you why it's a bad idea. It's bad for the grid. It's not bad for the grid. What's bad is that we need to optimize our grids. We can optimize our grids. It's not impossible to optimize our grids. In fact, it wouldn't even be such a time-laboring process that we wouldn't see it in our lifetimes. I would definitely see it within the next, as electric cars get more and more, electric vehicles get more and more play in the market, and we want to see them, we want to use them. I mean, I don't know where. A lot of people ask me about my car all the time, about, what's it like to charge it? What's it like to charge at home? What's it like to charge when you're out? Range anxiety, how much range does it get? All these things that people worry about that they really shouldn't worry about. Like, to them, I always say the same thing. The thing you should be worried about is we need to make sure our grids are better. You need to make sure that you have enough energy that you don't get screwed in the car. Right? So, we'll look at that. As Americans, we are not completely energy independent. We do depend on energy from other places as far as oil and gas goes. So we're not as bad as some of these European countries where they experience these rolling brownouts and blackouts that people warn us will happen with electric vehicles. But they do experience that. We don't experience it. They do, and it is crazy when it happens. Oh my gosh, my lights in the back are going nuts. They're changing all sorts of colors up in here. All sorts of weird ass colors. Anyway, we're not that bad, but we need, if anything comes out of this video, we need to get our politicians and our lawmakers and everybody who's involved in the process of making electric cars, or in the process of setting up electricity for these areas. We need to just get better electricity, right? That's the main thing. We need better electricity in our grids, because otherwise we will start to experience rolling brownouts and blackouts. California is already kind of going to go through that. I feel bad for Californians because of how everything has gone. But you can see here talking about that. So there is this reason to believe that because places like Germany are so energy independent, that it makes gas prices drive up because there's not enough gas for everything. So that's fair. That's a fair point. Now here's where it gets interesting. All right, how electric vehicles can slow a recession in its tracks. This is what you're mainly here for. This is what I'm here for. What if you didn't have to worry about a spike in gas prices? Instead, what if the US could set its own rates? That will never happen. Sorry, never will happen. Oil is a commodity, is a market-driven commodity. Yes, it is. Meaning its price is set on supply and demand. Of course, that's how all things are. It doesn't matter what it is. That's how electricity is. If we didn't use as much electricity as we did, you don't think these electric companies would lower the rates? Of course, they'd lower the rates. They'd want to do it. Increasing supply can take years. And the other largest oil producing nations, Russia and Saudi Arabia, so it's not as easy as a phone call. Oh, okay. So he's saying that in order to increase the supply of oil, we need to get Russia and Saudi Arabia aboard, and we need to really ramp up oil production. I get that. That's fair. And I can see where you're going with that. If you use just electricity, right, you're not having to ramp up oil production because guess what? You don't use as much of it. Here's a little thing here. You can see where the crude oil prices, went up. And you can see right here in 2008, it skyrocketed. That was the last time it was what it was this summer. What it was this summer was the same as this. It was crazy high. Anyway, a recession is almost always following or during rising oil prices. That's what he's trying to show you with the graph, is that every time a recession has happened, oil prices have gone up. Now he's advocating for the Inflation Reduction Act. A major goal of the new climate bill is to build clean energy economy. Yes, I do support building some kind of green energy economy. We can't be 100% sufficient on green energy, but green energy could help out a lot of in so many ways, right? We can start to power, we can use less. If we can get every house to have some kind of solar panels on it or something, just small amounts of solar so that you can plug in basic utensils, basic things that you use in your house, for example, things that use a little bit of energy, like maybe a can opener or something, stuff like that. That would be perfect. Every little bit counts, and that matters. But the bill aims to reduce greenhouse gases by 40% from a 2005 benchmark by 2030. So here's the interesting thing. That's a good idea. I want that. I really want that. And we can tell from other energy and environmental things that we've done that these bills do work, right? Back in the 70s and the 80s, we used to use AC refrigerant R12. R12 was what was notorious for causing a hole in the ozone layer. By switching away from R12 to R134A, which is what all cars use, we lose some of the cooling factor. R12 was significantly colder. It blew colder and made your car colder faster. But R134, while it doesn't do that, it still works pretty well. And it doesn't cause the harmful chemicals which go and destroy the ozone layer. Now, since we've made the ban and we've been switching to the R134A and kind of sort of been letting it trying to get that phased out of all of our society, right? In the 90s. So since the 90s, the hole in the ozone layer has actually started to close back up and heal itself. Crazy. But the fact is, I remember in the 90s and early 2000s how, watching a Bill Nye the Science Guy about how the ozone layer being gone would be one of the worst things. We'd have to walk around with hazmat suits everywhere. Well, now we because of the actions that people have taken, we've been able to start the slow repair process of the ozone layer and fix our problem. Green works. Green really, really works. And so we need it in there. We need some green. More green energy. Let's get rid of some of these greenhouse gases and start really getting our world back to a stable state. I want to make it very clear before I say anything else too. Pollution will always happen, and we do need those power sources. We need all power sources. We want all power sources, right? Pollution's going to happen no matter what. Somebody's going to come on here and they're going to leave a comment about how how, oh, well, mining for a lithium ion is so bad and all these other things. Like, the reality is, no matter what we do, we create pollution. It's how much pollution are we creating, right? It's all about when we make something, what is it going to do? With an electric car, we look at this and we say, hey, we make one battery with lithium ion. We mine that battery. That battery runs for years. We could say that battery runs for, Tesla rates theirs at, I don't know, 10 years or so. But you can run that battery hundreds of thousands of charges, right? And during that however many years, that hundred thousands of charges that you have, you're not producing any emissions when you use those charges. When you charge that car, you might have to use some to charge the car, but it's nowhere near what a gas-powered car would do. A gas-powered car requires the same amount of, mining and stuff. Now, maybe it's not as bad mining iron for a cast iron block than it would be for a lithium-ion battery. But you got to remember, too, after you do that, you're still creating pollution because you need something to fuel that vehicle, and that fuel, you get pollution for that fuel, and then you create pollution when you use the energy out of that fuel. So you've got 3 spots where you can make pollution. Electric vehicles, you really only get 2: charging and mining lithium ion. You don't create one thing. You create no emissions when you use the car, which is nice. That's helpful. That's how efficiency works. That's how we maximize our energy usage, and that's how we get rid of the greenhouse gases. That's how we stabilize ourselves, Now, he's looking at the clean energy economy. For one thing, it means powering homes, businesses, and vehicles with sustainable energy. The IRA provides funding for 950 million solar panels, 120,000 wind turbines. Wind turbines do not ruin mountainsides. I don't know where people are talking about. That's got to be one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. I heard about that, and it's so dumb. Why would we go against greenhouse? Only because the only reason I can think of is you're getting some kind of kickback for promoting unhealthy ways to generate power and energy. Because there's no reason why a wind turbine is bad. They have to be placed in very specific areas anyway to get as much wind power to generate. They're not going to be near homes. They're not going to make lots of sound that you can audibly hear. They're going to be far away in areas away from you. So I don't know what people are talking about. 2,300 grid scale battery plants, which is pretty cool. It's going to provide tax rebates and incentives to make clean energy options more affordable for everyday consumers. Like installing electric appliances can get up to $1,400 if you install electric stuff in your house, you can get up to $14 in rebates. It's pretty cool. Some of you guys probably live in houses that have gas, some kind of natural gas system, or maybe propane. I do, as a cook, I always tell people to do one thing, and that is gas sucks for cooking. It's great for cooking in environments where you need lots of heat all the time, but I'm telling you, at home, it's really bad for cooking with gas. Inside your house, it produces CO2. You don't have a strong enough hood system to actually exfoliate the fumes, and you're using less electricity than you would for electric or anything else. In fact, most of the energy that is created is not transferred into your pot or your pan that you're using to cook with. It's actually sent out and away from the pan, because odds are you probably don't have a pan big enough to absorb all that heat. It's just how it is. We're seeing this in China, where people are starting to get induction cookers, little square induction cookers. They use magnets to heat and basically turn your pot, as long as it is the right material, turn your pot into a magnet or into a heating source by using magnets, right? So your pot, instead of your pot having to be heated up so that can heat what's inside of it up, it becomes the heating source itself. Really cool stuff, really great stuff for cooking. But we're not going to get into all of that. Idea is that electric in your house is always better. Buyers looking to get the $75,000 or $4,000 if you buy a used one. That changed. There's a whole bunch of rules that I haven't looked up. I want to do another video on that, just on the tax rebates, because the tax rebates are going to be crazy important. We definitely need to make sure that we talk about the tax rebates, because the tax rebates are all over the place, right? I got the tax rebate on mine because of how I got the car. I leased it. So when I leased the car, the tax rebate is included. It comes straight from the Volkswagen company, right? I'm not eligible for another rebate because even though I leased the car, and I don't technically own it, I did receive a tax rebate of some kind. So unfortunately, I don't receive a tax rebate, but the tax rebate doesn't matter because the tax rebate goes into the car anyway. The difference, think about it like this. If you want to know about how the tax rebate really works in terms of what you can either get the tax rebate at the end of the year in your tax returns and use it for something else, or you can do what we did and get $7,500 off your car automatically. So you think our car is $53,000, you take off $7,500, it's like $44,000, which is nice. $44,000, it's like, I think, yeah, $44,000 or $46,000 or no. Sorry, ours was $44,000 after we got the tax rebate, and we got a little bit extra from our trade-in as well. But for the most part, most of that came from our tax rebate. So a little bit nice. I liked it. I got it off of my car. He says here, the more electric vehicles and clean energy projects being deployed, the less vulnerable the U.S. is to a recession. I don't believe that. I do believe that it helps the environment and can help. But I don't believe that there's any way that electric vehicles and clean energy products are the only part that handles that recession part, right? There's so much more to a recession. Look at what happened. It didn't matter if we had gas. It didn't matter if we had electric for the upcoming recession that we're kind of in. What happened was a major pandemic happened. A lot of people sat at home, were unable to earn money. A lot of jobs did not get money back, did not get any kind of fees. A lot of people lost their jobs or were furloughed for a long time. They lost their money. When they got the chance to get money, they got a lot of money back. They spent that money. They all spent that money. We all spent it, right? And when we put that money back into the economy, that's all we had. We were tired of sitting around, so we just did what we could. Well, that's great. It goes down. It's like right here, and then it goes down, right? And then it goes up because we have all this money and we just put money in. But then guess what? It's going to come back down because we all stopped having money, or we all got it, whatever was wrong with us, out of our system. In this case, we were sitting around in the house doing nothing. So all that stuff is gone. So now a lot of us are just trying to save money. When you live in Florida, especially Central Florida, you still see the tourists here. It's not like the tourists don't come. I'm not saying that. But you can definitely tell the difference between last year and this year. Whereas last year was much busier than this year. People had more money last year, and they had saved up, and they were sitting at home, and a lot of people got paid to either sit at home, or they got furlough money, or they got extra money, or they were getting paid the extra $600 for their unemployment. Well, now they don't have that money. They don't have that extra little bit of income coming in. They don't have a little bit of everything. They're having to spend more on all sorts of stuff. They're not willing to spend the money that they have, or they can't spend as much as they used to. That's what caused the recession, not electric vehicles. Now, having electric vehicles, sure, helps helps so that people don't have to spend as much money on gas. So, you know, that's a good idea in theory. But people weren't spending money on gas before when the pandemic was occurring, but they were spending the money afterwards. But the gas was cheap, right? And I think what's going on here with this whole thing is he's correlating the 2021 gas prices and the influx into the market, and then the 2022 gas prices with the decline of the market. That's not how that works, okay? The gas went up because gas companies took advantage of a situation. It's not because they didn't have the means of doing whatever they needed to do to make more gas, to make the environment better. You know, having an electric car wouldn't have changed that. It wouldn't have changed that at all. That would have just been a different company using a different excuse for something, right? So I can't see the correlation between electric vehicles and the recession unless the gas and oil, unless you can find a direct cause between gas and oil. And he's got a graph here that shows it, but it's the same thing. Right here, that's the middle of the recession. Of course, those companies that people don't have money, they all of a sudden lost money. Gas is going to go up because they are not making any money. I'd like to see what happens if gas stayed low. Does the recession all of a sudden stop? No, I don't think it would have stopped. It would have kept going. The 2008 market, a lot of what happened in the 2008 market had to do with housing. It had a whole housing crash. People were not paying banks on money. You know, it had nothing to do with the gas prices. It had to do with housing. You know? Now here he's going to talk about how the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates to try and discourage some of these banks from borrowing and raising up the end to kind of try and stop the curve from going too high before we do break into a full-on recession. We're not at full-on recession yet, but it feels like we are going to get at least more of it. And you can see there's some comments down here below here. But you can see here he's kind of giving a whole take about it. He's saying instead of relying on market-driven commodity to power the economy, clean energy can provide a sustainable solution. You are right. You are absolutely right. We do rely too much on a market-driven commodity. However, that market-driven commodity is not the reason, is a direct cause of the recession happening. It's not because the recession happens because of gas prices. It does exacerbate it. It makes it longer. It makes it take longer to get out of those situations. But again, 2008, what was that? That was the housing market crash. You know, here's the 2001, 2002 era. You can see that gas actually went down. Despite that, that's the dot-com bubble. If you don't know, that is the dot-com bubble. That's a whole other thing about how banks were just giving out money for people to make their own websites and stuff like that. There's a lot to that. That's not what this channel is going to be about. But you could see the gas prices stayed down. They didn't go back up. In fact, only a few years earlier, they were up. That's probably around 2001, right after September 11th, you know. So, in fact, by the end of the recession, look, the gas was as low as it was in years. You know, and then here you've got the early 90s recession where gas goes up, but it goes down pretty quickly, and it doesn't go that high up. So even though there's a slight recession occurring, you know, it doesn't do that much. Like, he's looking solely at 2008 where gas goes up and then shoots straight down. And it's like, a lot of that was driven by bad housing and bad deals being made. In fact, I remember so many times my grandmother saying, 'cause she worked at a bank, and she said they used to just approve you for a house loan. You'd walk in, you wanted a house loan, as long as you could prove that you worked at your job and you had enough money, they'd approve you for a house loan, and they'd give you a house, even if you couldn't keep affording it. And then all of a sudden, a couple people lose their job, and next thing you know, housing. He does have a point here where you can see that gas has started to increase beforehand, and it really never gets low again. It never gets this low right after that recession. The lowest it gets is right around, I want to say that's 2016, maybe 2017, where gas was really low. But I don't remember what the reason for that was. I don't think could that be when our previous president was in office? Because the lowest it gets is in 2015 here, and then it goes down. And I'm wondering if the gas was low beforehand, like if that was just the remnants of Obama's plans being enacted to get it that low. And then this would be about the time that Trump came in and made all of these higher by raising taxes on everybody. Curious. Anyway, that's not a debate for here nor there about that kind of stuff. This is about moving to electric vehicles will dull the recession, and I just do not believe that. I do not believe that recessions are not caused by one single object, and changing one thing does not cause the recession to go away. It is a combination of a ton of different things, from housing to travel to how the markets are doing, what's popular, what's going on, what's good, what's wrong. How many times, thankfully we haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure that there will be a time where our markets go down because everyone's just making bad investments on things. So anyway, I want to thank you all for watching. I know this video is about 40 something minutes long. Thank you for watching. I hope that my little rambling here was entertaining enough for you, and you like to come back, because I will definitely do more of this. Again, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I hope you guys have a great Thursday, the rest of your day, and the NFL season starting today. Separate topic, but there we go. Football season's back. Right in time.